Dave, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you on being awarded Railway Age's 49th Railroader of the Year award. The award goes back to 1964, and as you know, there've been a lot of luminaries, being given this award. How does that make you feel?
Well, Bill, first of all, thanks to yourself and Railway Age, and I'm very honored to accept this on behalf of Kansas City Southern management team and all of the workers at Kansas City Southern that have made our company more successful and allowed us to be able to accept an award like this. We truly have a good organization and a good company, and I know the company will be very proud that Railway Age has recognized KCS.
Well, I have to say that like other railroads, the transition here has been quite smooth. Transitioning from Mike Haverty, who was our 2001 Railroader of the Year, to you, and from taking a look at how you've done as a company, the continuity has just been quite outstanding, in our opinion.
Very fortunate to have Mike here as executive chairman. Mike has done a great job, a yeoman's job of putting this system together. I know it's been very difficult. I've heard some of the war stories, and I know he's got a lot of bumps and bruises and a lot of stress over the years, but he finally got the franchise put together, and it's the job of myself and this management team and the entire organization to execute the plan and finally make all of those dreams a reality. And I think that's what we're doing now.
Let's start with you and your career. Now, you've been in this industry 45 years. So how did you get started?
I actually started in 1967. I was from a small town in Arkansas. It was a crew change point on the Rock Island Railroad between Little Rock and Hartshorn, Oklahoma, so it was truly a railroad town. I had no intention of being a railroader, but the yard was 2 blocks from my house. I never intended to go to work for a railroad, but after some years of college, 1971 in Fort Smith, Arkansas, I went to work for the Frisco Railway as a clerk telegrapher. Worked the extra board for a number of years, and was fortunate to get accepted in the dispatcher training program in 1973 in Springfield, Missouri. Our dispatching office was all consolidated, so you got to dispatch the entire system. So that was my first real taste of railroading, and on nights and weekends, us young bucks felt like we were running the railroad. So it's a great job, and you got a scorecard every night. You knew what kind of day you had and how successful you were, what kind of problems you had. But that was my first real taste of starting to enjoy railroading.
So your first management job was assistant train master in Memphis at the ripe young age of 26.
When I came out of the dispatch office and went into the management training program, I think I was in it for 60 days. And then I was offered a position in Memphis as assistant train master. So I went down to our largest, busiest hump yard. We had our largest intermodal operation there. And I met an individual there who would help shape my career. He was my new boss. He had just been promoted to assistant superintendent. His name was Hunter Harrison. And as I'm sure as many people have learned over the years, he was a pretty good operating guy. And Hunter was a teacher. He took me under his wing as a new assistant train master. Of course, I had not switched cars in my life. I'd always been on the dispatch side, and taught me a lot. Taught me how to switch cars and make blocks and improve the efficiency of a hump terminal. So those were good times.
When did you really feel that your career was more than just as you say, a local railroader?
I think those days in the dispatching office, and then finally getting out into my first assistant train master job in a hump yard, I really enjoyed that. Just was really gratifying to see how many cars you could pour over the tipple at night, and how many cars could be switched and trains trimmed out, and how many trains you could make up on your shift. And it just was a great feeling. And in the Frisco, we had a lot of pride. We were a small railroad, but there was a lot of pride, and I think you got caught up in that. But then when the BN purchased the Frisco in November of 1980, I was assigned to Director of Trains and Terminals, and I was the liaison for our region. About that time, I met another individual that would become important later in my career. I met him at a customer event. I was division superintendent. I'd gone to a Clipper event with a customer of ours, a mutual customer with Santa Fe, and met Mike Haverty. And of course, now I've become an operating guy, so I can talk to you the operating language. So Mike and I spent some time together. Our wives were there as well, and I liked him, and I thought, well, I'm going to remember that guy. Again, I didn't know what role he would play in my career later, but a very important time. During my time at the Burlington, I had met the MyJack group. I had met Jack Lanigan Sr. We had purchased some intermodal cranes from MyJack, and I had always kept in contact with Jack, and they had a terminal operating business that had only about 3 terminals. At that time, the railroads were trying to save money, so they were contracting out their intermodal facilities. And it was just really a startup business. It was really starting to become very popular and a good way to save money. And so we formed a company called Interminal Services. I went to work for Jack Lanigan Sr. As the general manager of that group, and I did that for 4 years. ITS still exists today. It's a very successful company. Jack taught me about the customer. Hunter Harrison taught me cost control and terminal operations or yard operations, how to be efficient, but Jack focused on the customer. Jack said, Dave, you're a good guy, you know how to control cost, but you can't save your way into prosperity. You've got to have growth, you've got to have customer growth, you've got to have more revenue every year. So that's what I learned from Jack Lanigan, and that stuck with me from then on. I really enjoyed my time there, and I'm glad that ITS has been very successful. But I still had this yearn to do something else. I always wanted to work overseas. I always wanted to try the international side. So I had an opportunity to go to work for American President Lines. APL at the time, they were the leading innovator in the double-stack train market. They had started the unit double-stack trains coming off the West Coast from the vessels into the U.S. and then marketing the backhaul of those containers back domestically. So I was the managing director of Chicago for a time frame, and then I went to Atlanta as managing director of the Southern Region. And the Southern Region, Mexico reported to the Southern Region. So that was my first exposure to Mexico. Little did I know that would become very important to me in the future. Tim Ryan, the chairman at the time, was working a program he called cross-pollination. He wanted some of the domestic people to have a chance to go into international and some of the internationals to come into domestic. So I got an opportunity to go to the Philippines as a managing director. This is my first overseas assignment, enjoyed it, and I did that for about 14 months, and a job came open in Hong Kong. So I managed to move to Hong Kong as a managing director of Hong Kong and South China. Within a year, we were reorganized, and they created a vice president's position. So I became vice president of Central Asia.
One thing you've said is every young manager should learn is never to burn your bridges. And Mike Haverty sort of re-entered your life and your career. And
we'd been over about 7 years. Usually assignments are around 5. So about this time, the Panama Canal Roadshow comes to Hong Kong. So being an ocean carrier, I'm called on by some of my old friends from MyJack doing this roadshow and potentially rehabbing a railroad that ran across the Isthmus of Panama that was going to connect the ports. And not only did I get interested in the concept and thought it would work, but they started talking to me about the job. I have a rail background, I have an ocean background, and a terminal operating background, so I was told I would be perfect for the job. So the statement about never burn your bridges is now I've got the Lanigans re-entering my life and Mike Haverty re-entering my life, both as co-chairman of the Panama Canal Railway. So the Starlings are now on the way to Panama. I moved there June of '99, and we started construction in January of 2000. We finished it in July of 2001 for passenger service. That's another thing nobody believed we could do and make money, was passenger. In fact, I remember walking into the board meeting and presenting an idea for passenger service. And Mike looked at me from across the boardroom and said, "Starling, do you know how long it took us to get rid of passenger service? And you're going to try to bring it back? This better be very profitable."
Kansas City Southern, you came on board in 2007?
Well, Panama was maturing.
Yeah.
Business plan was working. Volumes were growing. We had a good management team. Of course, Mike and I got to spend more time together. The relationship and the respect for each other grew. Personal relationship. Mike became a good friend. So in 2007, Mike asked me to help with Mexico. A lot of the ocean carriers that we served in Panama were the same customers that they were trying to interest in Lázaro Cárdenas. So as we started talking to these customers, they would ask us about Lázaro Cárdenas. I'd share that information with Mike. And then, Mike, as always, comes up with the idea, why don't you help us with Mexico? So in 2007, I started spending some of my time in Mexico with the KCS team, helping develop the intermodal side as well as the port. And then in 2008, Mike asked me to come to Kansas City as President Chief Operating Officer. So I accepted the position and came up in July of 2008, and then joined the board in May of 2010, and then became president and CEO in August of 2010.
Let's talk about Mexico.
Mexico is really our growth story, and you could see that even back in 2007. You've got more manufacturing moving to Mexico. Even today, the GDP is growing faster than the U.S. And if you look at our railroad in Mexico, we run down through the industrial corridor from Laredo all the way down into Mexico City, Lázaro Cárdenas. So about 65% of the population is there, and about 60% of the GDP is in that corridor. And it's growing like gangbusters. I mean, you're getting more, we call it near sourcing. We talked about it for 2 years. Now everybody else is talking about it. Biggest success right now is coming with intermodal and automotive. There's 2.6 million truckloads that cross the border every year that go into territories that KCS serves. We have less than 2% of that market. So we call intermodal in Mexico the last frontier.
So going forward, the company is in good financial shape. You've had excellent results this year. What do you see over the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, we've talked about the automotive and intermodal network. I think you're going to see continued growth there. I think the people in the U.S., business people, we have a lot of information on businesses manufacturing that may locate to Mexico.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add?
This is really, it's a good moment for Kansas City Southern, and I'm just very pleased that our railroad has been recognized. I know it's the Railroader of the Year, but I'm one person. It's really the Kansas City Southern employees that have made this happen, and I just hope they feel very good about this recognition and what it means to them. I think it's just we've become relevant in this industry. We're no longer a regional railroad, and I think we should all feel very good about that, very good about ourselves. Thank you.